Day 369 of doing a LeetCode problem every day until I get a job. All right, y'all, we're back again another day, another LeetCode problem where we're doing daily LeetCode problems. And today we have question number 2341, maximum number of pairs in an array. The difficulty level is easy, so you already know we're going to keep the solution as simple and easy to understand as possible. But before we get started, y'all, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you need any new Apple AirPods, go on and check out that link in the description so you can get you some. Now let's see what the question says. You are given a zero-index integer array nums. In one operation, you may do the following. Choose two integers and nums that are equal. Remove both integers from nums, forming a pair. The operation is done on nums as many times as possible. Return a zero-index integer array answer of size 2, where answer 0 is the number of pairs that are formed and answer 1 is the number of leftover integers and nums, after doing the operation as many times as possible. All right, y'all, that sounds simple enough, but I can understand how it still may be difficult to understand. So let's go ahead and take a look at these examples just to make sure we're doing this problem correctly. So in example 1, the input nums is an array of integers 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, and 2. The output is 3. Explanation says form a pair with nums of 0 and nums of 3 and remove them from nums. Now we have an array of integers 3, 2, 3, 2, 2. So what they did is they took this one at index 0 and this one at index 3, made it a pair, and removed it. So that's one pair. That's one pair, right? Now form a pair with nums 0 and nums 2 and remove them from nums. Now the array of integers is nums is 2, 2, 2, 2. So now we're looking at this array because we already removed the ones from the initial input array. So from this array, we remove nums of 0, which is this 3, and nums of 2, which is this 3. So we remove these two 3s. Now we have two pairs. We have a pair of 3s, and we still have this pair of 1s right here. So that's two pairs. Then it says form a pair with nums 0 and nums 1 and remove them. Now we're left with the nums equals an array of integers with just 2. So now we remove this 2 and we remove this 2. So that's our third pair. So now we have 3 pairs. That's where this 3 comes from, right here, because we have 3 pairs. It says right here, answer of 0 is the number of pairs that are formed. So right now in our output we have 3 pairs. Then it says answer of 1 is the number of leftover integers in nums. So as you can see, once we remove these two pairs, once we remove these two 2s, that's our last pair, and now we're just left with this, right? And then it says no more pairs can be formed. A total of 3 pairs have been formed, and there's one number left over. So once we are left with this, that means there's one number left over, right? Just this 1, 2, because we already removed all of the pairs, but there's 1, 2 left over. And it says answer of 1 is the number of leftover integers in nums after doing the operation as many times as possible. So since we have this 1, 2 left, we put 1 in answer of 1 right here. Boom. So we put this 1 right here. So we have the output is we have an array of integers, we have 3 pairs, and we have 1 number left over, and that's how we got it. So let's go ahead and take a look at example 2 just to really bring this home, make it make sense even more. So in example 2, we have the input nums equals an array of integers 1 and 1. The output is 1 and 0. Explanation says we can form a pair with nums of 0 and nums of 1 and remove them from nums. Now we have a blank array. No more pairs can be formed. A total of 1 pair was formed, and there are 0 numbers left over. So since we pair these two 1s together, we pair those, we remove them. That's 1 pair, right? So we could put the 1 pair right here. Since there are 0 numbers left over after that 1 pair, we could just put a 0 right here and answer 1, and thus our output is an array of integers 1 and 0. So finally, let's look at example 3, where it might get a little tricky because there are no pairs. So in example 3, we have the input nums equals an array of integers, which is 0. The output is 0 and 1. Explanation says no pairs can be formed, and there's 1 number left over in nums. So since no pairs can be formed with this, we could put a 0 here. But since no pairs can be formed, that means we have one leftover number. We have one odd number in the array, so we put that 1 right here for the one left over since there are no pairs. So I hope that made sense to y'all. But now that we understand the question, let's get into the fun part, the actual solution. Solution is not that difficult at all. When I first was looking at this problem, I was making it harder than it has to be. It's not that difficult. All we have to do is count the pairs and count what's left over. And that's all we have to do. So we don't have to return the pairs. We don't have to do anything else. We just have to count the number of pairs and count what's left over. So once again, we're going to get into that. And to do that, we are going to start by declaring a variable called freak. And we're going to set that equal to a dictionary of integers. So it's going to be int colon int. Then we're going to come outside of that and we're going to initialize it with parentheses like so. Once again, y'all, we've been doing some hash map problems the last few days. So we're trying to really enforce our understanding of the basics and fundamentals. So if you need more practice with hash maps, go check out the last 2 or 3 previous days. We did hash map problems then as well, so we can enforce our knowledge on hash maps. Now, the second thing we need to do, we need to create another variable which is going to count the number of pairs, right? Because remember, all we have to do is return the count of pairs, right? And the numbers left over. So for that, we could just declare a variable called pairs. This is going to keep track or keep count of the number of pairs we have, and we're going to set that equal to 0. Then we're going to declare another variable, and we could call this count, and we're going to use this to count how many numbers are left over. So for that, to initially start, we're going to say declare a variable called count, and we're going to set that equal to nums.count, just like this. Now we need to iterate over each number in the array. So for that, we're going to do our for loop. We're going to say for num and nums. Then we're going to open up the brackets. Then we need to keep track of the frequency or the count of each number that occurs, right? So we need to keep count of each number in nums. So like it's 1 1 here and it's 1 1 here. So we need to keep track that there's 2 1s in nums if we're looking at this in example 1. So to do that, we're going to say freak. We're going to use our hash map. We're going to say freak, open up the brackets. We're going to say num, comma, default, colon, 0, come outside the square bracket, and we're going to say plus equal 1. So every time we see this num and nums, right? So every time we see this num and nums, this num right here, we're going to start the count at 0, and every time we see it, we're going to increment the count by 1, and that's how we're going to keep count of how many times we see a number that appears. Then we're going to come down here, and we are going to say we're going to check to see if the frequency of num is even, because if it is even, then that means we can create pairs out of it. So for that, we're going to say if freak square bracket num, then we put an exclamation point after the square bracket. Then we're going to say mod 2 equals 0. That means, so what this mod does, it is going to keep track of the remainder. So if we divide the frequency of nums or the count of nums, if we divide it by 2, that means there's an even, if we mod 2 and the remainder is 0, that means there's an even amount of those numbers that occur in nums, which means we can create our pairs, which means we can increment pairs by 1. So we can say pairs plus equals 1, right? So if we can divide it by 2 and there's nothing left over, that means we found a pair, and we could increment our pair count by saying pairs plus equals 1, and that's going to keep count of our pairs. That also means we need to remove those pairs from the array, or at least in this case, we're going to say count minus equals 2 to simulate us removing the pairs, because remember, we don't have to actually remove the pairs. We just have to keep count of what's left in the pairs, right, or in the array, right? So each time we find a pair, we could just subtract 2 which will simulate us removing those pairs when it comes to the count of elements that are in the array. Now we just need to return the array where the first element is the total number of pairs and the second element is the number of leftover unpaired elements. So for that, all we have to do is come right here and we can say return, open up the square brackets and say pairs, comma, count. Boom. And this is going to return the pairs and index answer of 0 like it wants, and it's going to return the count of all the leftover answers or elements in answer of 1 like it wants us to do. So now let's go ahead and run this and make sure it runs properly before we submit it. And it's accepted, y'all. So let's go ahead and submit it. Make sure it's still accepted after we submit it. Let's see. Ooh, look at that. 0 milliseconds beats 100% of users. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I like to see. So with that being said, y'all, I hope y'all learned something today. Once again, we're just reinforcing our skills when it comes to hash maps and dictionaries. So make sure you get one more look at the code, read it, learn it, love it. And yeah, I hope to see y'all here today. I hope to see y'all here tomorrow for another day, another LeetCode problem. See y'all then.